Okay, YouTube should be coming back. I'm not gonna bother with Aurelia for right now, just because so much stuff. Something's going on with my Discord on this computer too, where like it refuses to let me log back into Discord. So if Discord like suddenly pops up, I don't know what I'll do. Like it basically refuses to actually like open because it tries to go do an update and it just fails immediately. I'm back. I am back. Don't say you're the most qualified because you've used her so much, just as someone with deep knowledge of her or something. That's just it. I am. I'm literally the most qualified. There's nobody that's used her more. There's nobody, not a single person in existence that has thought more about the design of this character than me. I'm not even kidding you. I have thought more about it than the devs. Okay. Yeah, it's quite literally a case of like you can ask Avalon, you can ask Bob, you can ask anybody that's ever worked with Beyond Numbers. I have picked people's brains. I have driven them insane. I have literally hypothesized like every single possible iteration of certain things to Kingdom Coming back because I care about this character a lot. Okay. So we're gonna have to start over from scratch, chat. I know people didn't want me to, but it just be the way it be. How crazy will she be when she does get an NP upgrade? You'll see. Oh, oh, I gotta figure this out, Avalon. Let me try a trick. I gotta know where Discord installed itself. Where did you install yourself? Or did you uninstall yourself magically? Is that what you did, Discord? Did you magically uninstall yourself? Because, like, not gonna lie, that's impressive. Hold on, chat. Let's go to the screen. While I Do something. Holy shit, I think it did. No way. There's no way. There's no way it actually. It actually bricked itself. That is impressively bad. Why is Discord stored under my app data roaming? Are you fucking kidding me? How stupid is this program? It can't be this bad. Like, it can't be, right? I refuse to believe that a power outage caused a program. Like, the rest of the computer's fine. It caused specifically Discord to uninstall itself. Like, that's fucking insane. I'm just gonna have to run the installer again. Now I ran the installer and it's opening the original shortcut. It opened perfectly fine. All right, hold on. I gotta close this just to see. No, it works perfectly fine. I could not make this up if I tried. I have never seen a program that lived exclusively in your profile and nowhere else on your computer. And then it bricked itself with a power outage. And then literally I click the installer to reinstall it. And instead it just pops open and updates itself like normal. I've never seen that, ever. Okay. Okay. I don't know what the fuck's going on. This shit's wild, dude. Where were we? Gotta send that zip to OKest anyways. Oh yeah, it's all good. Like, okay, sorry about that, chat. Yes, I'm back. Yes, the power's back. I am terribly sorry for all of that. Just long story short, my power went down in the middle of recording. It immediately came back. And so I started rebooting my computers. I was just like, oh, that sucks, but whatever, right? Then my power went down a second time, came back on in the rest of my house, but the stream room completely off, which meant the breaker flipped. So I had to go flip the breaker in my garage, go out there in the dark, flip the breaker, come all the way back, sit down. As I'm sitting down, getting ready to press the button on my computers, my power completely goes down a third time. And I'm like, oh, son of a. And like, immediately, I'm just like, it ain't coming back this time. And sure enough, it didn't. Like, how long was I gone, chat? Like, I think it was literally like an hour it was out for. So, I'm surprised it came back this fast at this point, because usually it is what it is. I hate this. I pay like $400 to my power company every month. It sucks. Electric bills are freaking terrible. And I'm like, and you're going to go out just like intermittently several times a month. I'm like, this is stupid. They need to fix this, or I shouldn't be paying this kind of bill. But it is what it is. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to have to restart from like basically ground up here. Just kind of is the story of these things. Thank you to everybody for sticking around. Thank you for everybody that came back. I appreciate you. I'm sorry about this. And we will reap again. Yeah, I gotta start this. I gotta get myself back in the mentality here. Yeah, if you're talking about using like a group of units rather than a single devoted unit, yeah. Korean Dark's gonna be better as a party buffer. In theory. It definitely depends on the situation, but okay. Can't control power outages, CAD? That's where you're wrong. My name is Zeus. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, obviously I can't. But I feel like I can bully the poor people that work at the power company, maybe. At least into giving me some sort of, like, fix to my power lines. Get out there and trim those hedges. Okay, let's begin. Okay, that's working. Oh yeah, the other reason I have to restart from scratch, chat, the old VOD will have corrupted itself, so I won't be able to use it anyways. I can't believe it. The Mad Lads over at La Single finally have actually buffed my waifu. So, y'all know I'm a huge Lartoria fan. I have been for years. And Lartoria has always been, one of my favorites. Just one that I just really love using. It's actually because of Lartoria that I ended up even getting into Fate. So, for years now, she's been in a really sort of weird spot. I'm going to say Lartoria herself had frankly been at different points in the game's history, both really good and kind of on the opposite end. So I do think she's still, even at this point where she had been on the downswing, she was still a very usable and capable unit, but certainly needed some love, needed some attention, needed some help. If you're just here for a simple, like, understanding of Lartoria's latest buff and just kind of want to know what the, like, quick down and dirty impact of that is, this is a really, really strong upgrade. This absolutely turns things around for her. She's now one of the strongest AoE Lancers in the game. And this does allow her to have multiple uses as both part of a multiple damage dealer setup and as a potential support unit. So this does give her the capability to really work in a lot of new ways, on top of just being stronger in the ways that she was already useful. In that regard, it's absolutely a game-changing buff for her. You definitely should pay attention to this, and this will have a huge impact on her capability. as well as other units getting used alongside her. Now that was the TLDR. If you would like to know more, we're going to be going over numbers, we're going to be going over situational usefulness, and even some demonstrations for you guys to maybe see and kind of pick apart this buff in finer detail. Why? Because this is a very studied unit for me. I have basically a Lartoria at 120 NP5 on both NA and JP. Now, you might stop right there and go, hold on, then this guy doesn't know at all about NP1. And you would be wrong. I have actually prolifically used Lartoria at NP1 and NP2 as well over the years, just due to, again, for years I didn't necessarily have an NP5 on JP, or using other people's variants when the times called for it. And I definitely don't shy away from it. She's one of my favorite units, so I would seek that out at times where maybe other players wouldn't. So in that regard, one of the best people you guys can watch a buff analysis from on this unit, because I can speak to her capabilities pretty much to a T in a way that most other people don't have the intimate knowledge of. I will still try to check my bias at the door. Obviously, you guys know this is going to be a very enjoyed buff for me, but I will, again, try to do my best in being objective on things. So, with regards to the buff, the understanding of Lartoria over the years has been that she has always been a unit that has had a ton of charge. She has had a lot of capability, even before the game actually had a lot of meta supports that could provide charge to the party. This is one of the reasons why she's kind of gone back and forth over the years as to being a strong unit or maybe not so much. Because depending on the current meta situation, Lartoria has been able to exceed expectations or underperform in relation to more powerful AoEs that suddenly had more charge capability. So this is one of the reasons why Lartoria has been kind of a weird sort of bellwether for the overall balance state of the game. And it's interesting because with her being a buster unit, she started out as actually the very first unit capable of being able to 3-turn with Merlin in the party. And that was prior to the release of Scotty, where the only other real, major charging support was Waver. She was still able to 3-turn with double Waver and Merlin. Other units couldn't do that at the time, so it was really to her benefit. Then over time, we started getting Scotty into the game, and then, later on, Castoria, Koyanskaya, you name it. So 50% charge units kind of abounded over the years and really helped out some of the other units out there in the game. And she actually started out by getting her first upgrade really not that long ago on NA. We are now at a point on JP where it's been quite a bit of time since this upgrade. And what this upgrade did is it gave her 2 additional power mods of 50% each to Chaotic and Evil. It was really, really a strong buff at the time, but its biggest limitation is the fact that it is only a single turn of duration. So while this did help, this did add new niches to Lartoria and improve her usefulness, it was still somewhat restrictive and definitely wasn't something that could be doubled up on. Now, yes, you can combine the niches to double up on it, but when I say double up, I'm meaning like with Koyanskaya. Because as the Koyanskaya system comes out later, all of a sudden you see the proliferation of 3-turn buffs, maybe becoming like more of a meta thing because of the ability to be able to double dip with them and get them a second time. So having that capacity to be able to overlap those things really helped out a lot of other units, whereas units like the Saber Faces that often had 1-turn mana bursts weren't really doing too hot because of that. So this was still a good buff for her, but it wasn't necessarily that strong of a buff. In fact, back then, you started to see other units getting NP interludes, a la Erish Kagall and stuff like that. So that really helped out those units within the Koyanskaya system, whereas Lartoria, her only buff was to a skill, and it didn't improve her per turn basis, so it did kind of mess with her a little bit in that regard. The Koyanskaya system coming in also didn't help in the fact that really Lartoria having as much charge she does in her kit has enough charge on her own with a Koyanskaya setup to be able to Black Grail loop. But interestingly enough, she can't touch Black Grail because of the block 50 charge issue. And what I mean when I say that is her Noble Phantasm has overcharge that grants charge after the NP. And it's a really nice effect, but the fact of the matter is it's just 20%. It does have the capability to scale even more if you put her later in a sequence or give her an overcharge buff. But the issue at play there is that 20% is really hard to utilize effectively within a traditional Koinskaya of Light setup. So this was one of the problems that Lartoria faced. Even when we got Koinskaya of Dark later that had an overcharge buff and had 30% charge, which would seemingly pair really well with something like this, it's almost like they designed it just perfectly to stop Lartoria from actually being able to touch Black Grail. So that has always been something that's been holding her back in comparison to, well, I'm just going to go ahead and say this, another unit that you'll probably hear a lot during this recording, which is going to be Melisson. Melisson is a unit that, when she comes into the game, she's almost immediately able to touch Black Grail, and it's kind of been, history ever since, as she has been the unit to beat in the AoE Lancer category. Now, I'm going to be bringing her up a lot tonight, but it's not necessarily to denigrate Melisson in any way, so much as to provide a comparative standpoint for Lartoria that, frankly, the rest of the community will be comparing her to. So it's interesting to see that, a unit like Lartoria seemingly had enough charge to do it, but couldn't actually activate the charge, thus kind of hamstringing her a little bit compared to a unit like Melisson that just had 100% charge baked into her kit and easily manages to 3-turn with actually like 50% charge to spare in a lot of scenarios. So this really was very much to, a unit like Melisson's benefit, but not so much to a unit like Lartoria. So now over the years, we've kind of gone through and we've seen other units get upgrades. We've seen, like, for instance, Erish Kagal get more upgrades. She used to be the lowest AoE damage Lancer, and the reason why was because it was often stated that she had way more of a challenge-oriented kit. She wasn't necessarily meant to be your devoted farmer, so it made sense that she was supposed to be a little bit lower on the damage capacity. But at least with regards to the change of things with, the Koinskaya system coming in and Melisson coming into the game, feels like the devs looked at Erish Kagal and they said, okay, you know what? She's been at the bottom for long enough. Let's give her time to shine. Let's give her some upgrades. And they really did. And it really helped her out. So it's good on them to do that. It really helped Erish Kagal's performance. But then we had this problem with Lartoria here, where she kind of has been relegated to the back of the pack. You had other more powerful Lancers like Roma had come out and stuff like that too. So she was just kind of in a weird spot where she didn't have a very strong upgrade that worked very well in the new system. Her charge situation didn't work well in the new system. And it's not that these things are not good and effective. It's just that literally the meta state of the game was openly hostile towards her at that point. So it was really weird to see that, but it still gave me hope over the years that potential fixes to Lartoria could easily address this. And it's definitely something where I've been hoping and waiting for this upgrade for quite a bit of time. I've had many people on stream ask me what it is that I thought they should do. And I actually did have a proposed buff that would have been even stronger than the buff that we got today. But before you jump out of your seat, what I mean when I say that is I had proposed giving her an NP interlude. However, in the process of that NP interlude, maybe doing something to affect that 10% charge that she needed to be able to touch Black Grail. So either giving her an overcharge buff or buffing the amount of charge that her overcharge gave her. Either one of those two things would have potentially allowed her to traditionally touch Black Grail, thus improving her damage standpoint on that end on top of the Noble Phantasm interlude. But looking at that, there was no easy way to do that without either just completely breaking the unit or literally making it a very clunky upgrade. And so while I proposed that, hey, yeah, this is like the best case scenario for what they could do, I really didn't ever think they would do it. Now, several times on stream, people asked me, hey, what do you think they're going to upgrade? Do you think they'll upgrade a skill? And I said, I would prefer the NP interlude because that's usually the strongest way to get more damage. And I did say, out of all the things they could do with Lartoria, that upgrading her damage capacity is definitely within the realm of possibility, especially giving her a really strong damage buff. I just assumed over the years, and frankly, with a kind of jaded sense, that the developers weren't going to do that. They seemingly hadn't really wanted to give Lartoria the time of day for a long time, and it really felt like they just didn't much care and wanted to preserve sort of the Melisande meta for as long as they could. So needless to say, when they came out with this buff, I was ecstatic. I literally woke up this morning and was like, holy crap, I cannot believe they actually did this. Because, yeah, it was always in the possibility of something they could do. I just didn't expect them actually to do it. In fact, this is one of the singular strongest skill upgrades the game has ever seen. So, the interesting part about this, and I will provide you guys with numbers later, is that in the process of this, giving her 50% extra steroid that didn't exist before definitely helps out her damage output, but still doesn't necessarily make her the top Lancer in the game. So that should kind of sink in as to the overall power creep that has occurred over the years and the neglect that some of the units have had. When we say some of these units need buffs in the game, we really do mean it. It's pretty insane that you can give somebody that kind of steroid and it still doesn't immediately move them to the top of the heap. That's pretty nuts. That kind of speaks to the sheer gap in performance that you have between certain units at this point. And it's one of the reasons why balance in this game is important. If you want people to actually roll for more of the units, you really do need to start picking up the back end single. So I'm very happy that they gave this buff, but this is absolutely a textbook example of why they need to be doing these buffs more often, because this is how you end up in a scenario where you have to give a unit a 50% steroid in one fell swoop. Now, this does position her well if she does actually ever end up getting an NP interlude, but I'm not anticipating that sort of thing to happen for a long time. I will certainly be ecstatic whenever it does happen, but again, I don't really anticipate it. So what is the actual buff? You've heard me talk a little bit about it and the overall situation that Lartoria has been in. The upgrade here is going to be an upgrade to her charisma. She had the original basic party-wide charisma of 18%. It was okay. It was nothing too terribly strong. It just was a pretty standard charisma from back in the day that worked well. Charisma always has been a fairly nice skill in the fact that it buffed the entire party, not just the unit itself. So it meant everybody, including the supports, carded harder. Now, over the years, they have been kind of revisiting some of the charismas and really trying to round them out to a nice even 20% while adding additional effects, because I think the devs kind of felt like charisma was not bad, but just kind of standardized and not really that, impactful. So I think they've kind of tried to revisit it on a lot of units and really give it, a little bit more of a claim to fame. So they do that with Lartoria, and they take this 5-turn 18% charisma and they up that to a nice even 20% over 3 turns for the entire party. But they don't stop there. They recognize the need for Lartoria to have way more damage, and they didn't give her an NP interlude because for some godforsaken reason they are just allergic to it. I'm not really sure. But they definitely seem to favor not giving a unit an NP interlude if at all possible at this point. And I'm not really sure what the devs are thinking in that regard. But at least we can look at this and they can say, hey, they recognize that need for more damage. And if it's going to happen via a skill upgrade, it really needs to be a strong skill upgrade. So they give her 20% NP damage for 3 turns. NP damage itself is just already a really nice thing. This means she has attack up. This means she has card type up, which is her buster attack. And then this also gives her NP damage up on top of the power mods that she already did have, which are actually the same category as the NP damage up. This is really, really a strong thing. This means she has all 3 damage types. Everything scales multiplicatively, and it's really, really good. However, on top of that, the fact that it is NP damage means that usages with Oberon are going to scale really well, because Oberon doubles any source of NP damage. Now, with that in mind, we can see that not only is she now providing 40% steroid to everybody in the party, but this is just a solid upgrade for her. They don't stop there though, because this alone would not be enough to actually really put Lartoria on the map still. That's right, giving her an extra 22% doesn't really break the ice. She'd still be behind most of the other Lancers in the game with just that upgrade. So they come back and they give even more. They give a trait-specific NP damage up on top of the normal NP damage. And that is your NP damage for Knight of the Round Table allies for 3 turns. This is a really, really solid and intuitive upgrade, because this not only leans into her being, you know, a Knight of the Round herself, but also a leader of them, and it also kind of leads into the kingly aspect that she does have. So it's really, really a solid upgrade from a lore standpoint, and what they do with this is they give an additional 30% NP damage on top of the original 20%. So now she has a whopping total of potential 50% NP damage up from one skill. And this is also party-wide. So this is going to impact everybody for 3 turns that is a Round Table Knight. And it's interesting because I saw a lot of people over today that were like, you know, it's April Fool's today, and they're thinking, surely this is a joke, and it's actually supposed to say except in here, as in except for Lartoria herself. And the answer is no, because even with this upgrade, as we already mentioned, this still doesn't just immediately move her to the front of the pack. So this is actually a pretty balanced upgrade. This is a testament to how far behind Lartoria was in overall damage output. So 50% NP damage up, but who actually qualifies for the Round Table Knight upgrade? And in that regard, Lartoria herself is considered one of them, but there are other servants, including Mash, Saber Alter, Mordred, Lancelot, Gawain, Bedivere, Arthur himself, and then also some of the Fairy Knights. So you're going to see Barghest, but only in Ascension 1, where she's known as Fairy Knight. Fairy Knight Gawain, sorry, my brain. Then you've also got some of your summer units as well. And then you've got Balbon in her first Ascension, and Lalter, Lartoria herself, as we already mentioned, and the list just kind of keeps going on, as you guys can see on screen. The interesting part, again, here is that you guys need to be really careful if you're going to use the Fairy Knights. Only their first Ascension qualifies, and the lore reason for this is because it's only in that Ascension that they are adopting the Knight of the Round Table myth. This is why the second and third Ascensions don't qualify for it. This is also why none of their summer Ascensions do either. But I did see a lot of people upset over that or wondering why this was the case. That is actually the lore reason for why it is. They are merely adopting the title of the Knight of the Round. They are not actually a Knight of the Round. So it's only in that first Ascension where they still have that title that they actually qualify for this buff. Otherwise, if you use them in their later Ascensions, they won't get the benefit. So be very careful with the Ascensions that you're using one of these units with if you're trying to use them with Lartoria. Keep that in mind with regards to this. Now, again, Knight of the Round Table's actually got quite a bit of staying power. I'm going to say, as a niche type, one of the most amazing things about this is that this is actually going to buff units that already seemingly are strong, including Castoria, Lady Avalon, Merlin, and Castoria Berserker. So you've got a lot of the meta supports in here getting the benefit of this, even though they won't have NP damage, but you do have a really, really strong damage dealer potential right there. And some of these units themselves have charge, like Squirtoria. So having the capacity to buff another unit alongside to maybe take out a wave themselves is really, really going to be a strong aspect of this skill. You definitely have a lot of capability there in who this can enhance and how much damage you can get out of it. Again, it doesn't have to be some sort of crazy thing, but this is a really, really nice upgrade for her in a sort of multiple damage dealer setup. I do really, really like it in that regard. Now, as we look to this, there's another aspect here that needs to be talked about with this skill, and that is the fact that this skill is on a 5-turn cooldown. This is a really, really nice thing because this does allow for certain functionalities, two of which I really want to talk about. The first is because of the overall low cooldown of this skill, you can immediately get this skill back in turn 2. So you can utilize it turn 1 of a devoted 3-turn double Koyanskaya composition, and then immediately get it again in turn 2, allowing for you to very quickly ramp up Lartoria's damage. She will immediately just begin to scale harder and harder into the later turns, and it's really a nice benefit for her in that regard. This is going to make wave 2 damage very solid. This is going to make wave 3 damage very solid. There are going to be a couple of caveats with that we'll end up talking about when we go over the actual numbers. The other aspect of this is because this is on a low cooldown, you can reduce it further with the 5th append. So what that means, you can get it to a 4-turn cooldown. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, then that means I can potentially double it up in the same turn. You could, but I'm not going to say there's really any benefit to trying to go for that. Instead, what I see the benefit of that sort of thing being is that you can maybe potentially get away with a single Koyanskaya of light, giving her a cooldown reduction rather than necessarily having to require something else. You could also maybe use something like Atlas Mystic Code or anything else that can grant a 2 cooldown reduction to allow her to pop her skill on turn 1 and turn 3 of a 3-turn scenario. So this is a really, really versatile skill now. And again, I'm really surprised that the devs actually went this hard with one skill upgrade. So that is where you can see it's going to impact not only her allies, it's going to impact her. It's going to allow for a lot of different versatile situations for its usefulness to allow for a ton of damage scaling. And we haven't even gotten into the numbers yet. That's just me kind of getting philosophic with you guys on this. So with that in mind, let's kind of talk what this is going to do for Lartoria properly here. So with regards to this, I think the best thing to talk about is going to be craft essences. Where can Lartoria work from? What is going to be the best thing for her? Now, if you're in a sort of, I don't know, maybe a multiple damage dealer setup, something like Black Grail is still absolutely in the realm of possibility. She can have her maxed out mana loading. She can have her own charge skill. That's 70% charge right there. If you have a 30% party charger or somebody else that can kind of grant charge after some sort of effect, she can gain the benefit of being able to get all the way up to full herself, take out a wave, still buff the rest of the party for 3 turns. Really, really strong there. If you're looking at maybe trying to get away with sort of a maximum damage 3-turn loop for her, that's going to not be Black Grail. That's going to be Rising Mudrain instead. A very powerful seed that's like a hybrid of Black Grail with a lot of its attack power benefits, but still having an overcharge effect on it, giving her that extra charge that she needs on the back end of her NP to be able to set up that 3-turn. That's also going to be a really, really strong tool for you to use. But admittedly, this is a much newer CE that maybe not everybody has at MLB. So in that regard, what you can still do, even if you don't have the capacity to reach Mudrain or to be able to touch original Black Grail, would be to try to get away with something like a 50% charge CE. Of those, the best one by far for her to use is going to be something like Cranking. And that's going to get her still a ton of power. She's already had the capacity to work from this standpoint even before now, but it still can work to her advantage as it is even more NP damage that she can have baked into her kit that can be kind of a setup if you wish to double it up with something like Oberon. Now, there may be scenarios that you run into where you don't have a, craft essence that you can choose to take. Instead, you're using an event CE and you're kind of restricted by that. She can work from pretty much anything other than base 0 unless the base 0 CE has an overcharge in it. And even then, she can still work from 0 as long as you're not requiring her to 3-turn. So still a whole lot of capability in terms of craft essences that she can use. And in that regard, you may even find yourself in a scenario where you use something like Original K-Scope maxed out to allow you to, maybe quickly and easily get to a second NP. That is certainly a possibility for her and something that you could easily take advantage of, especially if you have another accompanying unit that can grant overcharge for her, giving her more charge on the back end of her NP. So each one of those scenarios is certainly possible for her and can be utilized effectively to get more output out of her or to set up a multiple damage dealer setup for additional clearing capacity. Now, with those in mind, let's kind of work on those charge scenarios. How is that going to work? So you guys can see on screen, we've got basically 2 scenarios here. The first one is going to be using Rising Mud Rain. The second one is going to be using a 50% generic CE, something that has 50% charge on it. So in the Rising Mud Rain scenario, we're effectively starting out at 0. You actually don't really have to have a maxed out mana loading append in this scenario because it's that block 50 charge issue again. We can't really utilize it effectively. So turn 1, we're going to start out with double Koyanskaya in the front line, and then we're going to have her own 50% charge skill being immediately available. You basically are going to want to start out by popping all 3 of Lartoria's skills in turn 1, because you're not going to be able to save the mana loading, the mana burst for turn 2. This will result in a slightly less performing turn 2, but remember, you're going to be able to double stack that attack up buff in the second turn, so it is going to help you out at least somewhat. So again, pop all 3 of Lartoria's skills turn 1, basically go ahead and use the other Koyanskaya charge skill, get her all the way up to full, fire off the NP the first time, and the overcharge application from Mud Rain should allow her to instantly charge back to 40% charge. From here in turn 2, you now want to utilize the remaining Koyanskaya charge skill, rotate her out for Oberon, and bring him in and have him give 20% charge. That's going to bring her up to 110%, which is a little bit of overkill, but it's perfectly fine. From here, you should also be able to reactivate the second skill. Just don't reactivate Lartoria's first skill. Save that for turn 3. So fire off the NP one more time here. We'll end up refunding the base 20% amount as we end up in turn 3. Now in turn 3, you've gotten her charge skill back, so go ahead and activate that. Go ahead and use the Oberon 50% charge skill and his third skill, as well as pop your Mystic Coat attack buff and pop Lartoria's first skill at this point to maximize her damage output in wave 3 and watch the numbers fly. Doubly so if an enemy is chaotic or evil, you're going to get a ton of extra firepower out of that. So it is a really, really strong upgrade for her in that sense. Now, in our second scenario, we're going to be utilizing Lartoria with a 50% charge CE. Again, it doesn't really matter what you use. Cranking is the best one here, but you can kind of get away with anything, including an event C if you have to. In this scenario, we're still starting out with double Koyanskaya, but the additional benefit is going to be that we can now pick and choose where to use Lartoria's skills. This actually does help us out quite a bit more in this scenario. In this one, we still don't need her mana loading append. We're going to have the 50% charge from the craft essence. Lartoria herself is going to activate her second and third skills. That'll give her more damage and more charge. That'll bring her up to full. She'll fire off the NP the first time with both the Koyanskaya steroids on her. Then in turn 2, we refund that 20% immediately. We're going to go ahead and basically pop Lartoria's mana burst first, then the Koyanskaya charge skills. That should immediately bring back the second skill for Lartoria. Pop that again and go ahead and rotate one of the Oberons, or you could, rotate before you pop the second Lartoria skill. And then as Oberon comes in, you're actually going to go ahead and be safe to pop Oberon's first skill here too. It's a little bit overkill, but hey, it is what it is. So she'll be at 140% charge. And then at that point, you can fire off the NP a second time. That will get you back to 20% refund again on wave 3. You're going to go ahead and have everything back again for wave 3 other than the second skill for Lartoria. So pop both her first and third skills there. That'll give her 50% more charge. Use Oberon's second and third skills to get yourself another 50% charge and more damage amplification. Pop your Mystic Code attack buff and go to town in the final wave. Now, from there, we are basically going to go ahead and take a look at Lartoria's actual raw damage numbers. So, it's interesting to note where she was before. Now, these are just her own numbers under her own power, not effective numbers. So, just neutral, no external buffs from like a Mystic Code, a Craft Essence, or a support character. This is just her own skills. So at NP1, you're looking at about 23k there, neutral. Not terribly weak, but not very strong either. And then, as we can see, she does have the power mods for Chaotic Evil. Either one of those would bring her up to about 34k. And then if you have both in play, it's actually going to be 50 or 46k. So a little bit more firepower coming in there. If you do get NP2, you get a little bit more of a bump up on these numbers. And you can almost see the direct correlation there between having both power mods at NP1 in play versus having one power mod at literally NP2. It's actually going to end up being the same number. So right there, just the immediate impact of how much damage a second copy will add to this. And you do have quite a bit of firepower if you manage to get both at 61k at NP2, and then even more scaling on up the chain as you head towards NP5. Now, with her new numbers though, we get some pretty interesting results. As you guys can see on screen here, the new base number for NP1 is going to be 35k raw. And then if we end up having one steroid, it's going to be 46k. And then if we end up almost 47k. And then if we end up with both there, we're going to end up with 58k. So already an immediate impact at sort of the least amount of power that you can have, which is just the unit under its own strength. Quite a bit of damage capacity here, quite a bit of output. And you guys can actually see, again, another relationship right here as the both buffs at NP1, having both steroids in effect, is going to be equal to having the same amount as just raw NP5. So another scalability relationship there. So what does that mean then in a proper damage composition? How's it going to look if we actually end up giving Lartoria a proper comp? So on screen, you guys can now see this is her new numbers with a double Koyanskaya of Light, Oberon, and a level 100 Mud Rain. So this is starting out from 0% charge with a Neo Plug suit maxed out. Now, in Lartoria's case, these are still going to be neutral numbers, but this is now including all of those external buffs. So already at NP1, you're at 93k on wave 1, 122k on wave 2, and a whopping 375k by wave 3. And that is not including any power mod in play. Again, the second you include the power mods, you get quite a bit of scalability on turns 1 and 3, not any additional change in turn 2, due to the nature of you having to pop Mana Burst on turns 1 and 3, thanks to starting out from 0% charge. Now, interestingly enough, we can also see another change here, with it being that the double power mods here still not going to have an impact in wave 2, but even more scaling on the first and the third turn. Also, we can see the impact of if we didn't have either power mod in play, but we did have the man attribute from Koyanskaya, very similar like effects, but a little bit better scaling, especially on the second turn. So definitely a little bit of a trade-off there, just something that's really going to help out depending. But you get a little bit of a lower number on turns 1 and 3 as a result. Interestingly enough, you can also have a combination of 1 power mod with man and 2 power mods with man as well being a thing for additional damage output. NP2 is going to bump those numbers even harder, and NP5 going to really just send them through the roof, as we were experimenting already earlier with these numbers and really noticed that, well, a very strong Lartoria is really, really strong after this upgrade. Now, in comparison, let's look at Melisand's numbers. So Melisand in a traditional composition is going to be used with double Coin Sky of Light, Oberon, and a level 100 Black Grail. So for her, NP1 on wave 1 is going to be about 93k. Pretty much dead even with Lartoria at that point. NP2 is going, wave 2 is going to end up being about 119k compared to Lartoria's 122k. Small edge to Lartoria there, but still not a whole bunch. Wave 3, though, we get that insane synergy with Oberon as we get the huge boost up to 440k, whereas Lartoria will only be at 375k without a niche. So this is where Lartoria having the niches is really going to come into play and really be to her benefit. If Lartoria has only 1 niche in play, the numbers will be a lot more comparable, but Melisand will still kind of edge. If both niches are in play for Lartoria, however, she will win this fight, and it will be something that will prove to her benefit. This is going to be one of those scenarios where if you already have a strong Melisand, you really don't need to worry too much about this. But if you have a strong Lartoria, this can be at least something where you could say, hey, maybe I can outscale the competition, assuming that I actually have the niches in play for me. So it's going to be one of those scenarios where you just really got to watch what the node actually has in it and whether or not you can utilize it to your advantage. Now, I do think this is still going to be something where Melisand herself does get the ability to kind of be impacted by a relationship here with Koyanskaya. Her having the man trait that she can kind of bring into her niche that she doesn't normally have a niche for is really going to help her out because she doesn't have that power modifier anywhere in her kit. So this is going to scale really nicely with her and provide her quite a bit more damage. Definitely something that can help her out. When you compare this to Lartoria, it's pretty much going to be a similar scenario. However, it's going to be very difficult for Lartoria, even with both niches, to beat Melisand if she has the man trait. That is going to be something that's going to be more towards Melisand's benefit. This is why I said, at the end of the day, you can see this buff extremely strong. It does allow Lartoria to beat Melisand sometimes, but it's not so much that it's going to constantly propel her beyond Melisand. This is why you could see just the sheer gap in scalability that had already occurred within the Lancer class. Now, as we start looking towards, again, maybe a different scenario here, you guys can see a 50% charge scenario. With Lartoria, in this case, instead using cranking. Remember, the impact that this one will have will be that it will allow you to shift the skills, particularly the mana burst, to turns 2 and 3 rather than turns 1 and 3. So allowing for a little bit better performance in that middle wave that maybe might be a problem. So at NP1, you're looking at about 62k here, raw, and then wave 2, basically 134k, so already a little bit better performance. Wave 3, you get 322k, so a little bit higher performance in wave 2, a little bit less in waves 1 and 3, but that's just, again, going to be because we're using a, frankly, inferior craft essence to something like Black Grail or Mud Rain. Cranking is still a really, really strong CE, but it really just pales in comparison to one of the strongest Cs in the entire game. So as you look at something like this, you could definitely see that this allows for a little bit more flexibility in skill usage, a little bit more ease of use, but not more damage output. This is sort of going to be your backup option, or maybe an option that you might have to rely on in certain scenarios where you just haven't been able to roll the craft essence or something like that. So again, the power mod's obviously going to help out with the scaling. We can kind of leave this on screen for a little bit in order to allow you guys to kind of soak it all in, as there is some really, really strong numbers here, particularly at NP2 and even all the way up to NP5 in terms of scalability. But then again, for comparison, let's look towards Melisande to see how does Melisande do with something like cranking. So at MP1, Melisande's going to be coming out at about 76k on wave 1, basically 100k even on wave 2, and 366k by wave 3. So stacking up with Melisande, again, the 62k that Lartoria puts out, gonna underperform wave 1. The 134k that she gets in wave 2, going to outperform Melisande, but the 366k that Melisande gets in wave 3 going to outperform Lartoria. So then where is it going to matter? Well, they're pretty much dead even at that point if you have even one power mod in play. But the second you get to 2 power mods, this is a Lartoria advantage, pretty significantly so. The issue is again going to be the man trait and what that allows Melisande to do. So if she gets a man attribute in there, she is really just going to skyrocket again due to not having that as part of her normal baked in kit. So 518k there by wave 3, pretty much insurmountable even with all the stacking that Lartoria can do with a 50% CE. So that's going to be another one of your breakpoints for, hey, if this situation has a man attribute in it, really not necessarily going to be the go-to thing for Lartoria, but admittedly, there's nothing wrong about using Lartoria in that scenario if you don't have a Melisande, or if your Lartoria is just quite significantly stronger than your Melisande. So either one of those two things could be true for a player, and definitely something to soak in. But I have one more scenario that I would like to propose to you guys, and this is the generic scenario. What do I mean? This is a 50% charge C that doesn't really have anything of value to you. Why would we include this? Well, because event Cs are a thing. A lot of the times event Cs have 50% charge on them, but they may not be all attack scaling. They may not actually have a steroid on them or anything that can enhance damage. So we just said, let's take out all the impact of what makes cranking and just instead give a 50% CE. Obviously, numbers are going to come down here. And so on screen, you guys can see Lartoria's NP1 3-turn numbers, again, with the power mods in play, NP2's numbers, NP5's numbers as well. So quite a bit of stuff. If you need to be able to see that, make sure you pause the video. But we did want to show this for comparative sake. And now as we look towards Melisande for another comparison, you guys can see NP1 here on wave 1 going to be about 65k, 66k-ish. Wave 2 is going to be 88k, and wave 3 going to be 326. Compared to Lartoria, these numbers are all higher other than wave 2 again, but similar scenario here where pretty much the second we get man, she's going to take off yet again, and Lartoria is not going to be able to touch it. The difference is quite literally that with even one power mod in this one, Lartoria has a slight edge. So a little bit the difference in the takeaway here is that while they're pretty even in both scenarios, basically with one power mod for Lartoria versus just raw Melisande, what you can see is that cranking and really just the additional impacts of that are scaling a little bit better with Melisande, whereas the more you back out, Lartoria just has more of the steroids baked in naturally to her kit. So it's helping her out a little bit more with less external sources of buffing. So this is something to understand. The scalability of Lartoria is such as many other units in the past have been that have had a ton of steroids baked into their kit. Units like Iskandar that just had Buster up, Attack up, and NP damage up already in definitely didn't scale as well down the stretch with additional sources, but in their own capacity, under their own power, they were very strong. Lartoria is now going to be a very similar style of unit. This means that she will function very strongly and very well in a scenario where obviously you're devotedly 3-turn farming her, but even more so in a scenario where she is maybe not the central focus, but maybe just a piece of the puzzle. So a multiple damage dealer setup, or again, some sort of scenario where you're utilizing her to maybe just take out a singular thing and buff somebody else to do most of the heavy lifting. That's where she's really going to shine quite a bit, but still have the capacity to function on her own as a damage dealer now. So I do think this really, really, really helps out her performance. This really helps out her utility, her usefulness in multiple situations. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys actually think this was too strong of a buff? Do you guys think that she still needs more even after this? And do you guys think that this is fair in relation to other Lancers and other units in the game? I will be curious to hear you guys' thoughts, hear you guys' feedback. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and I will love to see you guys back for the next video. Later. All right, chat, we did it. Now, I have even more I could say, but I don't want to make that video take even longer. Another very important video done. Yes, very important to me. Yeah, this is just an understanding of, and I think that lesson right there at the end is that, like, Lartoria, any unit just like her that has a ton of steroids in their kit scales best when their scenario doesn't have a ton of external buffs being possible. They are naturally strong, which means adding additional things, yeah, it still scales them. They still do more damage, but they don't scale as well as a unit that doesn't have a ton of steroids in their kit. Part of the black screen obscures the NP5 numbers. Correct, which is why you're just going to have to watch the video. I mean, that's like not on purpose so much as it's just what the editor has requested of me. So, but it will all be on the video. Don't worry about that. Chad, I should probably show off a multiple damage dealer setup, right? I think that's the thing. I think I should do that. How do I want to do that? Okay, that works. Uh, can anyone think of a nice like 3-3-1 node where the first two waves are Lancers? I have a comp that I can do for it. Oh, this is for the video. Who do you think will get bust this good to get a rerun? Probably Ryoma. I was trying to think, was there one? Chat, a 331 node that starts out with double lancers. Wait. Reactor core node. Reactor core node in LB3. I don't remember if that's 331 and not 332. I'm surprised you're still on. Well, we had a bit of a hiccup. What am I listening to? Don't worry about it. Sorry, just give me 1 second, chat. I'm just looking through the free quest real fast. Wait, is that a 333 node? No way. It's a 232. Shit. I didn't remember that well. Wait. Wait, hold on. Did the on screen freeze? Okay, that's super weird. It froze for me, but not for you guys. What about a 313 node? It's a mix of Saber, Zerker, and Rider, though. Is the Saber the single enemy? If the Saber's the single enemy, that's fine. Zerk in the second wave? No. I'd rather not showcase her on something like that. Not that she couldn't do it. She could. I just don't want to showcase that. No, I'm going to go look to see if the damn, it's not Lancer training or Archer training day. Crap. Well, I guess. Nope. Still not. Well, whatever. I can just use her in Ember Gathering. That's perfectly fine. Although. Wait, like, really? I am literally 1 AP. Fuck it, Bronze Apple. I don't care. I don't care, chat. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. So this is going to be an interesting one because I'm going to show you guys how I would do this. Wait, what am I doing? I mean, this isn't the best case scenario, but I don't really give a crap. This is more for demonstrative purposes. Sorry, I'm just thinking real fast. Yeah, it should work. Let me switch screens. Still ridiculous. Jesus. Uh, Having fun? Yes. Kind of overkill. I feel bad for the Ember node. And chat, you easily could have started her with like a 50% C or something. That was like a low key flex of like, this is what my waifu is capable of. And I don't mean in damage, I mean in charge. So it'd be what it be. Who's the girl in the middle? That is Zertoria, who's coming out this year. She does really, really good damage. So it'd be what it be. Great showcase? Yeah. That's what I was trying to like kind of emphasize. Like, look, you can have her take out 2 of the waves. It's really ridiculous. Yeah, let me see if anyone's on. I definitely stayed up later than my normal time. Oh, interesting. I see I spy with my little eye at Mr. Zephyr. We're gonna go raid him. Haven't gotten to raid Zephyr in a hot second. I believe he's doing raid progression. Again, go give that man some love. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm sorry about the power outages and everything. Thank you to everybody that stuck around till the end. We'll try to get this video out tomorrow, so I feel bad for OKS in that regard, but I'm going to send him everything right here in a minute. So thank you guys for watching. And again, be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Be sure to follow on Twitch here. Follows are free. I'll be back tomorrow to show you guys more Lartoria. Also, talk Nintendo Direct, since apparently that's tomorrow morning. And again, I'll see you guys for the next one.